You can still find coastal land in America for less than the price of a used truck. Not oceanfront mansion land. Not walk barefoot to your private beach while pretending property taxes are a myth land. Actual cheap land. The kind of land that shows up near Bay Street, Lewis, or Coden, or Crystal River, or some bayou road in Louisiana, where the map looks beautiful and the price looks like someone forgot a zero. And then, obviously, you keep reading. Because there is always a reason. Sometimes the reason is simple. It is small. It is wooded. It is not right on the water. It needs well and septic. The road looks like it was drawn by someone who had heard of roads, but never fully committed to the concept. And sometimes the reason is less charming. Flood zone. Wetlands. No utilities. No camping. No soil test. Protected wildlife. Storm surge. A property owners association that says you can own the land, but not quite have any of the ideas you had about owning land, which is very American. You buy the dirt. Then the dirt starts negotiating. But that is what makes these places interesting, because the cheap coastal towns that still exist in America are usually not the ones in travel magazines. They are not the polished boardwalk towns with matching benches and coffee shops selling $12 muffins with sea salt they emotionally sourced from somewhere. The real cheap places are usually just outside the postcard. A few miles inland, a few roads behind the beach, past the cute downtown, past the marina, past the last shop selling hand-painted signs that say salt life to people who have never cleaned a fish. That is where things get strange. That is where you find old subdivisions that never fully became neighborhoods, working waterfronts that never became luxury waterfronts, bayou roads, marsh lots, pine woods near beaches, tiny parcels near places that sound expensive, until you check the actual listing and think, wait, why is this $5,000? And that question is the whole video, not where is cheap coastal land? That part is easy. The real question is, what exactly is the land not telling you yet? Let's start on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, because Mississippi is basically where the coastal real estate market forgot to put on its expensive costume. Bay Street, Lewis, and Waveland sound like they should already be too expensive. Bay Street Lewis has the name. Waveland has the name. They sound like places where someone would sell you a cottage with white curtains, call it the Pearl, and ask $600,000 because the kitchen has blue tile. And yes, the pretty parts are not free. Nobody is accidentally giving away the charming downtown streets and beach-adjacent houses because they were too busy being humble. But the cheap story is not in the polished part. It is in Hancock County, around the edges. Land Search has shown small lots in the Bay Street, Lewis, and Waveland area under $10,000. Examples around $4,250, $5,150, $4,850, $5,000 in Waveland, and other little parcels below $10,000. Not acres and acres of beach paradise. Small lots. Often around 1/10 of an acre, 1/4 acre, that kind of thing. The kind of listing that makes a normal person say, wait, I can buy coastal Mississippi land for less than a vacation? And then a smarter person says, why? Because the Gulf Coast remembers things. Storms, flooding, low elevation, insurance, small lots that may not fit the fantasy. Land that might need utilities, septic, elevation work, or a very serious conversation with the county before anyone starts ordering tiny home windows from the internet. Waveland's census median owner-occupied home value for 2020 through 2024 was $218,900. That is not $5,000 land, obviously. But for a real Gulf Coast city, it is still low compared with most places in America where you can smell salt water and immediately hear a realtor clear their throat. Waveland also had a median gross rent of $927 in that same census period. Again, not free, but real. And the population estimate in 2024 was just over 7,000 people, down a little from the 2020 base. That matters. This is not a roaring luxury market trying to become the next Florida beach brand. This is a small Gulf Coast place where the expensive version exists, but the cheap edge has not disappeared. The trap here is simple. The postcard has a price. The deal is usually behind it. A few streets back, a few flood zones over, a few layers of fine print away from the part that ends up in relocation blogs. The flood map is sitting in the corner like it has been waiting to ruin the mood. A little farther east, the story gets even stronger. Pascagoula, Moss Point, and Gaudier are probably some of the best examples of cheap coastal America that still feels real. Not pretend coastal. Not technically 45 minutes from water if traffic, weather, and your suspension cooperate. Actual Mississippi Gulf Coast. Pascagoula had a median listing price of $152,500 in April 2026, according to Realtor.com. $152,500. For a city with a beach, piers, old oaks, waterfront parks, and the Mississippi Sound right there. That number almost feels rude. Moss Point was around $179,900 in April 2026. Gautier was around $239,000. And Moss Point's census median owner-occupied home value for 2020 through 2024 was only $110,100. That is the kind of number that makes coastal real estate articles nervous, because it does not match the usual script. The usual script says water equals expensive. Here, water equals complicated. Pascagoula has real Gulf scenery. It also has shipyards, industry, working coast energy, and the kind of landscape that does not exist to make vacation buyers feel emotionally moisturized. Moss Point and Gautier are more bayou, marsh, river, wooded lot Gulf Coast than polished beach town. And that is exactly why they belong here. This is not resort coast. This is working coast. And working coast does not usually come with a boutique candle store named after a shell. There are cheap lots in the broader Jackson County market too. LandSearch has shown examples in Ocean Springs, Moss Point, and Gautier under $10,000, $8,000 for around a quarter acre in Ocean Springs, $6,900 for a small Moss Point parcel, $8,900 in Gautier. Again, repeat after me. Listing price is not buildability. A cheap lot is not a legal home. A cheap lot is not a septic permit. A cheap lot is not a road that stays usable after rain. But it is still remarkable that in a coastal county, in a region with real water and real towns, those prices still appear at all. Because in most coastal markets, the word near water causes everyone involved to become unreasonable. Here, the water is real, the prices are real, and the footnotes are also real. That is the deal. Then there is Bayou La Batre, Alabama. And Bayou La Batre does not look like a place invented by a real estate developer, which is exactly why it is interesting. It is a working waterfront. Shrimp boat, shipyard, seafood, marsh, low roads, docks. Water that looks less like a resort amenity and more like someone's job. The town's history explains a lot. The Encyclopedia of Alabama says Bayou La Batre grew from an early Spanish land grant to French settler Joseph Bouchage, became part of the Mississippi Territory in 1811, and by the 1830s had its own hotel. It was once a vacation spot. Then a 1906 hurricane devastated the town and destroyed its tourist industry, which is one way for a place to stop becoming a beach resort. Not a subtle way. By the mid-1920s, the town's comeback centered around seafood, and that working waterfront identity never really left. Bayou La Batre was incorporated in 1955. Its population in 2020 was only 2,204. Recent census data gives it a median household income under $40,000. This is not a place where the main economy is people from Atlanta buying matching guest towels. It is a place where boats matter. The Nature Conservancy calls Bayou La Batre Alabama's seafood capital and one of the few remaining working waterfronts in the region. And there is a strange little movie detail here. The Black Pearl from Pirates of the Caribbean was built in a Bayou La Batre shipyard, because apparently even tiny working waterfront towns need one fact that sounds fake but is not. The cheap land story is mostly around the edges: Coden, Heron Bay, Holiday Harbor, Dauphin Island Parkway. Homes.com has shown Coden area land listings around $10,000, $12,000, $13,486, $17,955, and a 1.45 acre lot a little above $20,000. Some listings mention utilities nearby or available. Some say no restrictions. Some sound almost too easy, which means they should be treated like every land listing should be treated, politely, but with suspicion. Because no restrictions in a listing can mean no one checked the part where restrictions live. The beauty here is obvious on camera. Shrimp boats at dusk, weathered docks, marsh grass, mobile bay light, Dauphin Island not far away. But the reason it is still cheaper is also obvious. It is low. It is exposed. It has storm history. It is working coast, not luxury coast. And the shoreline restoration at Lightning Point tells you what kind of place this is. The project launched in 2016, Construction began in fall 2019, and by 2024, it involved breakwaters, tidal creeks, dredged material, recycled oyster shells, and 90,000 plants. That is beautiful. It is also a very polite way of saying, the shoreline needed help. That is Bayou La Batre's trap. The same water that makes it beautiful is the water everyone has been trying to manage, restore, block, redirect, and survive around. Cheap coastal land often comes with nature leaning across the table and asking if you have read the terms. Florida is where this topic gets dangerous, because the words cheap coastal Florida attract the wrong kind of optimism. People hear Florida and imagine beach. Then they hear cheap and imagine they have outsmarted civilization. Usually, civilization is fine. The cheap Florida is often not the beach. It is the nature coast. Crystal River and Homosassa are perfect examples. This is not Miami. This is not Naples. This is not even the classic panhandle beach fantasy. This is springs, manatees, marsh, canals, rivers, and Gulf access through a much wilder version of Florida. Crystal River National Wildlife Refuge was established in 1983 specifically to protect the Florida manatee, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service says more than 600 manatees migrate to Kings Bay each winter. Kings Bay was designated as a manatee protection area in 2012. So yes, the water is beautiful. In some places, absurdly beautiful. Clear springs, manatees, marsh channels, boats slipping through low, green water. The kind of Florida that makes people whisper, "Why is this not more expensive?" And then the answer arrives wearing rubber boots. Because this is not broad white sand beach Florida. This is water table Florida, wetland Florida, well and septic Florida, protected habitat Florida. Please do not touch the manatee Florida. Citrus County's median owner-occupied home value for 2020 through 2024 was $245,500. Not dirt cheap, but still low for a Florida coastal adjacent county with this much natural beauty. And cheap lots do appear in the broader Nature Coast fringe, sometimes under $10,000, sometimes around Crystal River or Homosassa adjacent areas. But those lots are often inland, wooded, rural, or utility light. This is where people get confused. They see Crystal River. They see Gulf access. They see a cheap parcel. Their brain edits out the part where the lot may be nowhere near the spring, nowhere near a dock, and very much in need of due diligence. The listing is not lying exactly. It is just letting your imagination do unpaid labor. The trap here is not that the area is ugly. It is the opposite. It is beautiful enough that people forget protection, wetlands, septic, and water tables are not decorative. A little north, Inglis and Yankeetown in Levy County push the same idea even farther. This is Old Florida. River mouths, marsh, the Withlacoochee River, Gulf fringe, quiet roads, fishing culture, a landscape that looks like it still has not fully accepted the idea of being developed. Levy County's typical home value was around $287,000 in March 2026, according to Zillow, down 2.9% over the previous year. Yankeetown itself is tiny, with limited inventory, and Realtor.com showed a median listing price over $300,000 in early 2026. So the cheap angle is not downtown Yankeetown homes are dirt cheap. They are not. The cheap angle is the land and acreage around the Levy County Gulf Fringe. Places where the map says Florida Gulf Coast, but the property description starts whispering words like wetlands, flood zone, well, septic, access, and buyer to verify. Flood data for the area shows why. A flood zone data page based on open FEMA records listed Levy County with more than 1,000 active flood insurance policies, an average annual premium of $1,716, and more than 1,300 claims since 1978, with payouts totaling tens of millions of dollars. That is not a side note. That is the plot. Inglis and Yankeetown can look peaceful in a way that almost feels untouched. But untouched land is not always cheap because nobody noticed it. Sometimes it is cheap because the land and the water are still negotiating ownership. In other words, this is not Beach Florida on discount. This is Marsh Florida, asking whether your budget includes elevation, insurance, patience, and humility. Now let's go to North Carolina, where one of the strangest cheap lot stories is not directly on the ocean at all. Boiling Spring Lakes. It sounds like a spa town invented by a person who owns too many candles, but it is really a wooded, coastal adjacent place near Southport and Oak Island, with old subdivision lots that can be shockingly cheap. Redfin has shown Boiling Spring Lake's land examples as low as $5,500 for a quarter-acre lot. $5,500. Near the North Carolina coast. And before anyone begins mentally placing a cedar tiny home and a hammock, the listing language does what listing language sometimes does when it briefly remembers morality. No water, no sewer, no power nearby, no camping allowed, cash only, wooded lot, dirt road. There it is. The entire cheap coastal land experience in one listing. A dream, immediately followed by a parental disclaimer. Other listings around $10,000 mention no soil evaluation on record and red-cocketed woodpecker zones, blue or green zones, depending on the parcel. That is not a quirky decoration. That is potentially important. The red-cockaded woodpecker is federally protected, and in areas where habitat rules apply, buildability can get complicated. So Boiling Spring Lakes is not cheap because everyone forgot North Carolina has beaches. It is cheap because many parcels are not normal build-ready lots. They may lack utilities. They may fail septic. They may sit on dirt roads. They may be restricted by habitat rules. They may not allow camping. They may exist mostly as a rectangle of pine trees that technically belongs to you and practically wants nothing from you except tax payments. Still, it is a great segment because it shows the difference between coastal adjacent cheap land and usable land. Those are not the same thing. A $5,500 lot near Oak Island sounds amazing. A $5,500 lot with no water, no sewer, no power, no camping, and unknown soil conditions sounds like a quiz. And the correct answer is, call the county before you become emotionally attached. Texas gives us Palacios, and Palacios is one of those places that seems too quiet for how coastal it is. It sits on Matagorda Bay, fishing town energy, flat water, piers, boat ramps, wind, long skies. The kind of place where nobody is trying very hard to convince you it is glamorous, which is usually how you know the prices have not been fully ruined yet. Realtor.com showed Palacios with a median listing price of $259,400 in April 2026, down over 13% year over year. Active listings were up more than 19% year over year. That is not a hot luxury market. That is a cooler, more inventory-heavy Baytown market. Now, Palacios is not the cheapest place on this list if we are only talking home prices. But it belongs because the broader Matagorda Bay and Karankahua Bay fringe has the exact kind of overlooked coastal logic this video is about. Bay communities, fishing lots, POA neighborhoods, small parcels, places that give you access to water culture without the price of a polished beach town. But again, the details matter. Bayfront is not oceanfront. Fishing access is not a private beach. A property owners association can be cheap and still tell you what you can park, build, or live in. Some lots may be RV friendly, others may not be. Some may have utilities available. Others may involve a long and expensive romance with infrastructure. And coastal Texas has its own personality. Wind, storms, flood maps, insurance, distance from major cities. Palacios' trap is that it looks like a cheap coastal answer, but it is really a Baytown question. Do you want beach life or bay life? Because those are not the same thing, no matter how nicely the listing photos frame the water. A place can feel beautiful, cheap, and slightly suspicious at the same time. That is basically the Texas Gulf Coast brand. And then there is Louisiana, specifically Houma, Dulac, Montegut, and the Terrebonne Parish Bayou Edge. This is where cheap coastal land stops being a real estate topic and becomes a geography lesson. Terrebonne Parish is beautiful in a way that does not look like any polished beach town. Bayou roads, fishing camps, shrimp boats, canals, marsh, water everywhere. The official Terrebonne Parish flood protection page says the parish covers about 2,100 square miles and is the second largest parish in Louisiana. It also says more than 85% of the parish is water and wetlands. The highest point is only 13 feet above sea level. That is not a statistic. That is a warning label. Homes.com has shown cheap property examples in the parish. $10,000 for 2.56 acres in Montegut, described as hunting and fishing land. $35,000 for just under an acre in Dulac. $50,000 for 15.7 acres on Grand Caillou Road. $55,000 for 2.9 acres in Dulac. Those prices look almost impossible if you come from a coastal market where a parking space near water develops self-esteem. But the reason is right there. Water is not background scenery in Terrebonne. Water is the main character. The parish government itself warns residents to check whether a property is in or near a flood hazard area. It reminds people that homeowners insurance does not cover flooding. It says flood policies generally have a 30-day waiting period. It talks about elevation as a flood protection method. This is not the place where you look at a cheap camp and say, how bad could it be? The answer may already be mapped. And yet, it is one of the most visually powerful places on the list. Because the same thing that makes it risky makes it beautiful. The bayou, the marsh, the boats, the quiet roads running through waterlogged country, the sense that the land is not fully land and the sea is not politely staying where it belongs, that is the contradiction of cheap coastal America. The price is not random. The beauty and the risk often come from the same source. In Hancock County, the cheapness starts behind the postcard. In Jackson County, it comes from working coast that never fully became vacation coast. In Bayou La Batre, it comes with shrimp boats, storm history, and a shoreline that literally needed rebuilding. In Crystal River, it comes with protected habitat and water so beautiful the rules had to show up. In Levy County, it comes with old Florida marshland and flood insurance math. In Boiling Spring Lakes, it comes with cheap wooded lots that may not have utilities, camping rights, or an easy path to build. In Palacios, it comes from bay life pretending, very politely, not to be beach life. And in Terrebonne Parish, the land is cheap because in some places, calling it land already feels optimistic. That is why these places are not talked about like normal coastal towns. They do not fit the clean story. They are too cheap for the beach crowd, too wet for the desert off-grid crowd, too complicated for the casual Zillow dreamer, too real for the glossy relocation article. And honestly, that is what makes them interesting. Because if you are looking for perfect coastal property, these places will annoy you. If you want a simple beach cottage with no risk, no floodplain, no repairs, no weird zoning, no insects with ambition, and no insurance problem, then no. That property exists. It just costs $700,000 and comes with a neighbor named Todd who has opinions about your mailbox. But if you are looking for the edges of coastal America, where land can still be weirdly cheap, these are the places where the map starts getting interesting. Not always easy, not always buildable, not always suitable for off-grid living, and definitely not always as cheap once you add the things the listing forgot to emotionally process. Septic, elevation, utilities, road access, flood insurance, permits, soil tests, surveys, restrictions. The quiet, adult little expenses that gather around cheap land like mosquitoes at sunset. But the opportunity is real enough to pay attention to. Because these places prove something important. Coastal America is not only Malibu, Naples, Hilton Head, and every beach town where a small cottage now costs the GDP of a nervous country. There are still forgotten edges. Working edges, bayou edges, marsh edges, old subdivision edges. Places where the water is close, the prices are low, and the catch is sitting right there in the fine print, waiting to see if you are actually going to read it. And that is probably the most honest version of the dream. Not buy paradise for $5,000. That is nonsense. More like, you can still find beautiful coastal places where the prices look broken. But the lower the price gets, the more the land asks you to prove you understand what you are buying. Because cheap coastal land is not usually a secret. It is usually a test, and if you pass the test, the flood map, the septic rules, the access, the utilities, the county office, the part where you call before you fall in love, then maybe there is still something there. A small lot, a cheap camp, a wooded parcel, a bay road, a place near the water that did not get swallowed by the luxury market yet. Not perfect, not polished, not waiting to become your coastal fantasy without paperwork, but real. And in modern America, real coastal land that is still cheap enough to make you suspicious is already unusual. The trick is knowing whether the suspicion is just caution, or the land trying to save you from yourself.